Welcome back to the Flex Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike T. Nelson. On the podcast, we talk about all things to increase strength, add more muscle, increase performance, and improve body composition, all without destroying your health in a flexible manner. Today on the podcast, we have Dr. Mona Pretorius, and we're talking about sports psychology. Like, what is some of the mental side that you can do to increase your performance in the gym? We talk about everything from high-level elite athletes to being able to apply some of these techniques just in a commercial gym. What are some of the stressors of athletics that are outside of just the field itself or training? What are some of the benefits to being able to change your state, how you can get ready for a lift, and then also get back to a state of relaxation, and then get ready to lift again, and many other tips that you can apply right away. So Dr. Mona is a PhD. She is also a highly ranked former South American weightlifter. She competed in the women's 63 kilogram event at the 2018 Commonwealth Games, and she won a bronze medal there. She can currently be found on Lift Big, Eat Big, and she has her own practice that she works with athletes also. We'll make sure to put all the links in the show notes here. And if you are also looking for other things to increase your performance, check out the Physiologic Flexibility Certification. It opens again coming up this September 18th, 2023. It'll be open for 1 week until September 25th, 2023. It's divided into 4 areas to increase your body's ability to recover, to be more anti-fragile, and just generally a lot harder to kill. The first pillar is temperature. So what do you do for sauna, exercising in the heat, all the way down to cold water immersion, which I just did today once again. Pillar number 2 is pH, everything from breathing techniques to true high intensity interval training, other types of cardiovascular and training in general. 3 would be fuels. This is an expansion of the level 1, which is the Flex Diet certification based on metabolic flexibility. So here we're expanding that out to the fuels of lactate and ketones. Everything from doing a longer fast to high intensity interval training and things that produce lactate itself, or what you commonly may have heard of as lactic acid. And number 4 is air, CO2 and O2. And all of these are arranged in a way that you'll understand the theory that goes into each one. You'll understand the overall concept of physiologic flexibility, and you'll have 5 specific action items for each individual one. So either yourself, or if you're working with clients, you'll know exactly how to apply it to them. And the nice part is most people don't have a ton of experience in each one of those areas, and you don't need to do this for hours on end. The intervention you can do is usually low on the time scale of the time that you or your athletes would need to invest in it. So check out all the information there at physiologicflexibility.com. We'll put a link down in the notes. You can get onto the wait list. We will have some cool bonus items once again. So that opens September 18th, 2023 for 1 week. So enjoy this podcast here with Dr. Mona Pretorius. Hello there, and welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Dr. Mike. I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
Good. We got to meet up with you and your husband was it a year ago, I think now, when we were in Texas. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think it was a bit less because I was pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
A little 4-month-old baby.
Oh.
But having a baby, time also goes so quickly when I saw you and Jody. And it was really nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, it was very fun. And you were talking about some great work you do in the realm of sports psychology. And I guess as a primer, why do you think people should care about sports psychology? I think there's more of an emphasis on it now than there ever has been. But I think if you poll most people, when you ask about performance, they just think of the physical performance. They don't necessarily think of quote unquote mental type performance.
Yes, I think it's one of those topics that, like you said, it's become very popular over the years, or at least more popular than it used to be. And I think people are starting to realize how important it is to actually deal with the mental side of things. And I think the nice thing about it is, because a lot of top level athletes have also been talking about mental health, it's shown the importance that athletes are humans too. Athletes are dealing with mental pressures. We are not just machines. We can't just go all the time, even though it seems that way, but you are dealing with a lot of stuff when it comes to the mental side of things as well. And by dealing with those mental aspects will only make you a better competitor at the end of the day. So I really do think it's one of those things that are important to athletes, and it's just, when it comes to dealing with certain pressures, dealing with anxiety, even for some athletes, when they achieve really great results nowadays with social media, they have to speak in public. So those are, again, other stresses that athletes end up facing. And at the end of the day, if you can work with those aspects and incorporate those mental tools into your training, just like your physical training, you have to continually train it. So it will only become better the more you train it.
Yeah, and at the professional level, it's always fascinating to me how, and I get that you're maybe interviewing the coach after a big game or that type of thing, but they'll pick some players and interview them, and they ask, just in my opinion, the stupidest questions. They're like, "Are you disappointed you lost?" Of course he's disappointed, or he or she is lost. What kind of question is that? Or they'll ask about, do you feel like you gave it your all? Or these like just weird questions that I feel are just not helpful. And sometimes they'll put an athlete up there who may not have a lot of experience with that, and they're just asking them these crazy questions, which to me seems, I would imagine that would be incredibly stressful.
No, definitely, because as an athlete, I feel like even with my past being an elite level athlete, you put a lot more pressure on yourself than people actually realize. And by having someone ask that question to you, like you said, at the end of the day, you beat yourself down
Yeah.
according to plan. And you put in not just days and hours, you put in years and years of work into becoming a top level athlete. And sport isn't always just linear progression. It's, you hit plateaus, you will compete in big competitions, and you might be the superstar of that game, and then come the next game and you mess up. And that's just part of sport. And that's also what makes athletes really good, is how they bounce back from those kind of things. So as soon as people think, are you really disappointed? I feel like you go home with it and you keep it a lot longer than the outside person, because the outside person might see it as, oh, they performed really badly, and then just forget about it. Where you as the athlete will linger with it. But again, what makes a good athlete is you might be dealing with this bad performance, or performance that maybe didn't go as planned, but then going back to the drawing board and being like, okay, this happened. I'll have my little grieving process, deal with it, get it out of my system, but then I have to move on and focus on my next, starting my training for the next competition, for example.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned about actually the skill of trying to forget something. I remember talking, it was a couple of years ago, with a buddy of mine here who coaches a lot of top American football players. And I was asking him about, what kind of person do you get to be like the defensive person on like a wide receiver? Because you almost by definition, you know that you are going to give up some huge plays. Like it's just probably an inevitability thing, but you're trying to prevent that. And they all have really short memories. And I was like, what do you mean? He's because if you do give up a big play, then you're the star person. You have to come back and probably play the rest of the game. They're probably not going to yank you and put in somebody else. But if you keep focusing on the thing that you screwed up, like you'll paradoxically make it worse. So you have to, like you were saying, acknowledge it and realize and learn from it, but then also literally forget about it, take the lesson and not try to drone on it, because I know if that were me, I would have a very hard time of just forgetting about that. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. And again, coming from Olympic weightlifting, where when you compete at a competition, you have 3 snatches, 3 clean and jerks. And sometimes what happens is you will miss your first lift.
Yeah.
Top level athletes who walk onto that platform, you can be the strongest you've been, everything can go according to plan, but you walk onto that platform and there's just a little technical fault. You might be a little bit too nervous. There's a lot of things that are happening. You might be going for a podium spot, so you have to start heavier than normal. And then when you've missed, say, your first lift, which has happened to me as well, you do sometimes go into a bit of a panic and you do think, oh my gosh, now I have to get my second attempt. And then sometimes you walk onto the platform and you miss your second attempt as well. Now you've got one more lift to make a total. And this could be maybe an international competition, or it could be you preparing for the Olympics and you have to make a qualification total. So it's really massive. And then obviously when this happens, you have to immediately be like, okay, I missed my second attempt. I can't dwell on this, because going on to that, I have to reset my mind, walk onto that platform, make as if it's my first lift again. And you have to forget about you missing that lift, because walking onto that platform, you can't have negative thoughts. You can't be thinking, what if I miss this? Because I feel, especially in weightlifting, it's such a mental game that as soon as you doubt your ability, there's a massive chance that you will end up missing that weight at the end of the day.
What are some techniques that you've used? And the reason we're talking about high-level athletes, because some people might be listening and going, oh God, he's just going off about professional athletes again. But I think the extremes also inform the means. If you find skills and tips and techniques that work at a high level, you may need to scale them down or change them a little bit, but I can almost guarantee that the principle and the idea behind it will also work for people at a lower level, where the reverse doesn't necessarily appear to be true. Like, you can have some stuff that'll work, but as you get up more to an advanced level, an elite level like yourself, those things don't always work, but the reverse does. So what would be some techniques or tips or things that you found that are helpful to reset that process?
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right. When it comes to, what you use at an elite level, you can scale it down for a person who might be doing their sport recreationally, or it could be them doing a presentation or a talk.
Sure. Yeah, different environment.
Yeah, and you might be start off your talk or your presentation, you might mess up your first few slides or sentences or whatever you're doing, and you have to, like you said, you have to then reset your mind. And I've been working with athletes for the longest time with this, and sometimes obviously you have to change it up for, depending on the athlete, you have to individualize it for them. But one of the techniques that I like implementing with athletes, especially when they just have a lot going on or they might have this thing that's affected them, is I've got this little letting go technique that I do with them. And what I say to them is, have a little mantra, have something that you say, but use it every single time. And again, practice this in training, so that if this happens come competition day, then you have this little letting go technique or this mantra. And yeah, it could be anything from let's focus, breathe, or let go, something short, something super simple. And then I always have them do a little physical gesture then as well. So it's a little routine of, say, letting go. Maybe they have a little elastic around their hand, or maybe they rub their shirt or something. And that's so saying basically breathe, let go, rub their shirt, and then just immediately visualizing yourself doing the successful thing that you want to do is just a little letting go technique. And then what I also like doing is, if a person comes in, say, to a training session and they just have so much going on, I will often say to them, there's another letting go technique that I really like, is write down whatever you have, put it in your gym bag, put it in a pencil case, whatever, and just make sure then that hour that you are training or doing what you need to do, you leave that problem by the door, because it's still going to be there when you come back. But having that time for you to focus and just letting go for that 30 minutes or that hour is also really good for the mind. And then, yes, the problem will still be there, but then revisiting it when you come back.
No, I love that. I think that's really key. And you mentioned about having the half hour time training. to just focus on that, which I don't know. I'm lucky. I only go to a commercial gym like once a week, like just to do upper body stuff and play with machines and use dumbbells. But it's great because I walk in there and I'm like, never have to squat, never have to deadlift here, never have to do anything too crazy. But it seems like it's getting worse that I don't know how many people in there look like they're not even paying attention. It just looks like they're going through the motions. They're scrolling through God knows what on their phone, about halfway to fall asleep between reps on the pec deck machine. And any tips on how people should better concentrate during a session? And I assume you would answer and agree that I think it's a lost skill that people don't realize how much performance and adaptation, even if their goal is body comp, that they're giving up. But yes, they're going through the motions, which is great, which is much better than what most people do. But any thoughts on how much performance or even just progress they're giving up by, it feels like having their attention span split all the time? And these are not people who are on call in the ER. These are people who could probably more attention.
I agree. The phones can be an evil nowadays because, like you said, a person will maybe do an exercise and then you get lost with even going through social media and they'll scroll, and before they know it, they've maybe looked at Instagram or TikTok or whatever for 5 to 10 minutes, and then they go on and do their second set, where you've then basically lost that whole exercise or lost the whole emphasis of going there, getting a good workout in, getting a good pump if you're just going there to train.
Sure.
Or working towards it might be a fat loss goal or gaining more muscle, whatever it might be. But I really do think that if you have a problem like that and you do get lost in those kind of things, then saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to turn my phone on to airplane mode or something. If that is the biggest thing that's distracting you, you have to make mental and physical effort to try and not get distracted by it. And I think that's where people get it wrong, because they think, like you said, I'm showing up at the gym and that's good enough. And then they might be into their program like 6 weeks or 8 weeks and they're like, well, I haven't really seen results. I was told if I walk into the gym and I do my training session, and like you said, walking in there is better than not walking in there at all. But it's so much wasted time that could have been used towards actually achieving your goal. So again, if you sit with this problem, turn your phone onto airplane mode. If you feel like there's certain music that motivates you, I'm a big fan of just either putting my headphones on, getting really focused, and I'm like, okay, this is my playlist for the hour. This is what I'm going to listen to psych me up, getting me through my training session, making sure that these are my goals. I'm also a very goal-orientated person. So before my training session, I will always look at what is my training that I'm doing so that I know going into the gym, and then being like, okay, this is my goal for today's session. So yeah, just walking in there and actually just having a plan is also a nice way to not get as distracted. Because I think as well, if a person just walks into the gym and you don't have any plan or you don't have a goal and you're just going to see what machines are open that day, that's also a way for people to then use it as an excuse of, oh, but I maybe wanted to use this machine and it was busy, so I'm going to sit on the bike a little longer and scroll through my phone, and then realize, oh, I have a meeting in I have to go and finish off my session, and you didn't really do anything. So a lot of wasted time, but it's in your control at the end of the day. You can control these kind of things. And I think that's where people forget that, if you want to achieve something, you have to make the effort.
Yeah, and you mentioned a good part about control is that I'm a neurotic person about the things I can control, but also being aware of the things I can't control. Like, so for me, like, I don't know, notebook is over there, but I actually write all my training down in a notebook. And I have clients, I still recommend this, even though, I send their program out online and stuff. It's just easier to manage. And even like the bigger goals I'll put what is the goal for that session or that lift, knowing that it's a goal. I may or may not hit it, but trying to just re-emphasize again that this is the direction I want to go. For some of my bigger lifts, I'll actually draw a little caricature of the bar with the plates loaded on it, because sometimes I do a standard 45-pound bar, sometimes using an axle at 75 pounds. So visually they look a little bit different. So I'll write that out. Normally I'll try to, if I do have my phone, I'll try to put on airplane mode, download whatever I'm listening to there. I have my big headphones that I can adjust the volume on the headphones, so I don't have to futz with my phone. And then I also have this weird rule where if someone asks me a question about my t-shirt or something I'm wearing in the gym, I will not wear that again because I don't want to talk to anybody. And I find that usually the darker, more scary black metal shirt I can find works good to just people stay away then.
Now, I love that actually, because I'm a very social person. And when I get talking, I can talk a lot. And when I'm in my training session, I take it really seriously. And that might be the athlete in me that I've been my whole life. But then again, when I used to coach, the same thing would happen. I would have people come up to me wanting to ask me a question or just wanting to know how things are going or when's my next competition. So I really found that wearing those big earphones was a nice way of saying, okay, we can talk after. This is my me time. I can't hear anything right now. I'm focused on my session. And I wouldn't even make eye contact, because I find that as soon as I make eye contact and wave, that's a good way for someone to be like, hey, let's quickly go and say hi to Mona. You also have to get certain things done. Yeah, I love the fact that you said if someone comes to you and asks you a question about your t-shirt, then you don't wear it again. That's it. That's it. I haven't heard that one before, but I like it.
Yeah, because back to controlling, those are all things I can control, right? At the end of the day, you can try to set all the process up as best you can. You can't directly control the outcome, right? And everyone knows, especially the longer you exercise, the more variability. You'll have some days that are great, other days are like, but you can control the setup to it. You can control your nutrition before. And I just feel like a lot of people are giving up. They want to achieve a bigger goal, but they are more worried about all these things that they can't control. And then you watch them train, and I don't even know if any of these people at a gym have a program. Like, I've seen 2 people ever write anything down. I'm like, I don't really think you can remember set 4 of a bench press last week. You did 5 or 6 reps. And if you're new, it probably doesn't matter that much. But the longer you've been training, like, I just got a PR the other day on a grip lift by a single pound. It's a small lift, it's a small implement, but I was like, oh, that's great. I wouldn't have remembered 63 versus 62 pounds unless I actually had it written down. And again, what are you going to do during your rest periods? Like, it doesn't take much time. Anyway, I'm like a grumpy old man talking about training that nobody does now.
No, when you talk about the things that you can control, again, this is one thing that I feel like a lot of people, like you were saying, that they focus on the uncontrollables. They will also make up a lot of excuses and say, oh, I'm going to see tomorrow if I'm not too busy.
Yeah.
Or an opening. But it's in your control to be like, okay, pull out your calendar right now. I've got time from 7 to 8 a.m. Like, that's what I did this morning. I knew I was going to be really busy with podcasts and getting work in, and then also spending some time with my baby. So I knew that the only time I'm going to be able to train this morning is from 7 to 8 a.m. So I made a conscious effort to be like, this is my scheduled time. I had a friend that came and joined us this morning in a training session. So again, that was a nice little accountability buddy, but that's in your control. Like you said, have a book, take it into the gym. Myself and James, we are doing this religiously. We always write our program down. We always record it. I find if I don't do that, I'm not as motivated walking into the gym. I'm not as goal driven. I also don't really see my results because I'm just training to train. And again, this could be, you might be an elite level athlete, or you might just be someone who is training recreationally. But having that kind of plan makes a big difference at the end of the day. And like you said, if there's your nutrition, if say that day something happens and you are in meetings the whole day, if you prepped out your meals, you can still stay on track with your nutrition. You don't have to go without food the whole day and then at the end of the night be like, okay, I haven't eaten anything, let's go to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or whatever, and then not even knowing how many calories you're consuming. So I feel, again, just being conscious of what you're putting into your body, making a bit of an effort, and actually doing a little bit of research as well about what's going to help you and what's going to harm you at the end of the day will also make a difference in your results.
Yeah. And I think also realizing there's more probably in your control than you realize. It's like you mentioned, the nutrition example is great. So when I worked for a med tech company, I didn't ask if I could eat in meetings. I just brought food into the meeting. And it wasn't like reheating tuna fish and broccoli and bringing it in or anything that was really offensive. I would mix some protein in a yogurt and put some fruit in it. Nobody could smell it. It wasn't like a big deal. I didn't really ask if I could do it. I just started doing it because most of the time I ended up getting booked over lunch. So I never really had a lunch period. And then it got to the point where the one day I didn't bring anything in, everyone's, oh, are you feeling okay? Are you sick today? I said, what the hell's going on? They're like, you're not eating in the meeting. I was like, oh. So it was like over time, people just expected it as, oh, it's just the thing that he does, whatever.
No, that is true. And the same with athletes. Always say to my athletes, and this is something again that I did when I would compete internationally. You never know what's going to be in when you go to an international competition when it comes to the hotel. Yes, you can
Oh,
start
yeah.
ahead of time, but sometimes they'll tell you it's out of their control. They're not quite sure if they'll have a sauna available. Especially I compete in a weight category sport, so you have to be exactly on your weight or just under when you compete, and if you don't, you can't compete. So what can you then do if there's not a sauna available? Maybe make sure you book a room with a hot bath and get yourself some Epsom salt. When it comes to little snacks and stuff, you might be visiting a foreign country that you might not actually be able to consume the foods that they have. You might have a certain reaction to it. It just might not sit well with your stomach. You might feel bloated. So taking the certain snacks with you that you know works really well with your body, little protein shakes, some carbs, whatever you might consume. And then on the day, have your like competition snacks ready. You might not know if there's a scale available. So take a scale that you've used at home that you know is the correct, gives you the correct readings, because I know also like some of the bathroom scales doesn't give you 100% the correct readings. So that does cause a lot of stress. So make sure that your scale is calibrated, or put it next to a calibrated scale and just see what is like the weight difference and take that with you. Yes, you might have to take a lot more things with you, but again, these are things that will make your life so much easier when you are in your hotel and they say to you, okay, there's no scale available in the hotel until competition day. There's no sauna available for you to cut weight. So you're like, okay, that's fine. I have a bath, Epsom bath, whatever, your snacks, your water, because those are, you are already worried about what you are going to be doing on competition day, and just eliminating extra stress on top of that makes a big difference.
Yeah. I remember having a discussion with a coach who's a buddy of mine when he had an athlete performing in the Sochi Olympics many years ago. And we were just talking, and he's, they said they'll have all this stuff in there. And I'm like, no offense, it's not a ding against anyone. I wouldn't trust anything that they say. Like, I would have a backup to the backup. Bring as much stuff as you can. Yes, you're going to be limited by it. And at the same time, after the Olympics ended, I had a conversation with a different coach friend of mine, and she was in charge of, I won't say the team name, but she was in charge of one of the US teams that went over there. And she's, oh yeah, it was bananas. I spent 99% of my time, no joke, on logistics, trying to figure out how to get all the things that they needed for their team there. Like, they had so many issues. And it wasn't just that Olympics. Like, that happens, I would say, more often than not, because they have this big proposal. Yeah, we'll do all this stuff. And then when it comes to actually delivering, it's, oh, whoops, we forgot. Oh, we didn't have this. Or like you said, oh, we'll have a scale there. There's no friggin' scale. Oh, sauna. Yes, for sure. There's no friggin' sauna. So a lot of times what you've been told a lot of times doing your prep, sometimes you can't even trust that.
No, I agree. And the same with actually taking hand luggage with you in
Yes.
putting your, say you've got equipment, like with us, weightlifting equipment, my weightlifting shoes, my weightlifting belt, my weightlifting suit. I pack that in my hand luggage.
Oh, yes.
With me the whole time, because I have traveled internationally before to Olympic qualification events, and my big bag has gotten lost, and it would come maybe the day before my competition. And I've seen some athletes, their bags might even arrive after their competition.
After, yeah.
And there's nothing more stressful than having your equipment go lost. So yeah, I always say if there's anything that is super important to you in that you will use on game day, make sure it's with you the whole time and keep an eye on it.
Yeah, 100%. Back to controlling stuff in the gym, what would you recommend people do between sets? Because the other argument is, oh, I don't know, I got to rest 2 or 3 minutes between sets, so I'll just scroll through Instagram because I got to rest for this amount of time anyway.
What would I recommend for?
Yeah, what would you recommend they do instead? Because usually just I find telling them, don't do that doesn't work. But if I give them something else to focus on and a reason for doing it, I find that works a lot better.
Oh, definitely. What I would recommend is, firstly, if they've got a little training book, like you mentioned, write down your weights that you've just done. So after each set, write down your weights, look at maybe potentially what are your next exercises so that you can also see if, maybe you are in a full gym. Maybe you need to make sure that the next part of your equipment that you are going to be using is open. Maybe going to just put your gym bag there. So just like planning ahead of what you are going to be doing next. But then also just using that time to just get yourself focused, walk around, focus on your breathing, getting yourself psyched up if maybe you are, and even if you're not an elite athlete, you can still give your best for each rep and every set. So doing that instead, even some people like listening to podcasts during their sessions as well. So if that helps you stay motivated and helps you get through your session, but actually you are still doing your session with good emphasis, then I would definitely recommend it. But if you find that you are listening to a podcast and it does, again, similar to Instagram, make you rest a lot longer because maybe the podcast, that one piece that you're listening to is really interesting, I would then maybe rather say use that podcast as something that you can use when you maybe drive or you're busy cleaning or whatever you are doing. Yeah, and just make sure that in that time it's something productive that's going to help your session and not hinder it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about alternating from, if we use autonomic nervous system terms, of more parasympathetic to sympathetic and up and down? So one of the things that I would recommend, I'd be curious on your thoughts, is that when you're resting, try to just rest as best you can. Walk around, like maybe open your gaze, look far away, let your heart rate come down and recover. And then before a set, try to get more focused on what you're actually going to do. Have your eyes even become more focused, like maybe take a few short breaths, something to try to get you a little bit more on that sympathetic side. Because what I've noticed with high level athletes who tend to have very good longevity, I don't know if they are conscious or unconscious of it, but they appear to do that almost all the time. Like when it's game time, especially like in the NHL, because the shifts are real short. Like when they're on, like the people who are elite are on. And when they're off, it's, yeah, it looks like that guy's going to go take a nap on the bench. Oh, yeah, he's like the star player. But I'm not in. So why don't I need to be on? In 2 minutes, then I got to be on. So they're very good at this kind of oscillating back and forth.
Yes, and the same in weightlifting, because
Yeah, weightlifting is a prime example.
you can't be on from the second you start your warm up until you walk onto that platform, do your snatches, then you've got a 15-minute break after your snatches, and then clean and jerks. Because this has happened to me. I have been on from warm up until my snatches, and then by the time I start clean and jerks, I'm exhausted. I'm physically exhausted. I'm mentally exhausted. I don't have anything in the tank left. So again, being able to preserve that energy between my sets is often the key that's going to be making the biggest difference between an elite level athlete and maybe someone that, by the end of the game, they don't perform anymore. So I always say it's very similar to a mindfulness training or just being mindful. And you said being present of your environment and getting lost again, like you were saying earlier, on your phone or something. But just sitting back, potentially just focusing on your breathing, fully relaxing. Because if you're tense all the time, your muscles are physically engaged and they are working. And if you've got a 2-hour game or you're going to be competing and you can't be on for 2 hours. And I read a book a couple of years back about the mindfulness athlete, and they talk a lot about basketball players. And very similar to what you're saying now is when they are on the court, they are on, but say they are resting or in between, if they blow the whistle and they've got like a X amount of time rest, they are so relaxed. You don't see them walk around being super psyched up in their rest time because they don't need to expend that energy. They just need to be on when it's game time. So getting yourself into the zone is really important, but then also knowing how to get yourself out of that zone is important as well. And again, like training the physical side of things, you have to train the mental side of things. And just a great way of doing that is being present, not having other distractions around you. So like you were mentioning, kind of just putting everything down, sitting down, focusing on breathing, focusing on relaxing. And then once you are onto the platform and you do your next lift, or you are going onto the field to play your next game, or maybe you are a martial artist and you're going onto the mat to, if you're a boxer or whatever, then having to be on in that second, getting yourself into the zone, getting yourself psyched up really quickly, because that is also something that's important. You need to be able to then psych yourself up really quickly. You don't need to do a whole 30-minute psyching up prior. You must be ready in that very second, and then ready to go. And then at the end of the day, you will just get better results and not waste your energy during rest times or when you actually need to be relaxed. Because they also say that's when you get stronger, or when you rest. So focusing on your rest, not just in between your sessions, but it might be the day before your competition. And some athletes will be on the day before their competition. They will be so stressed about walking onto that platform or whatever, and they will just get themselves psyched up and just be on, instead of actually saying, okay, I'm going to be relaxing today. I'm going to do everything possible to make sure I'm not on my feet, doing something that's going to take my mind off it. Because also when you think about it, that's very similar to you actually being on, or being actively on. Maybe watching something on Netflix, reading a book, listening to a podcast, listening to some relaxing music, everything that's going to be benefiting you and that's going to be helping you rest and recover, so that when you step onto that platform, all your energy and all your hard work that you've done is now saved, so that you can perform your best when you need to perform your best.
Yeah, I have a horrible time doing that. I'm better now, like with just some group competitions, because I just did the brute force method, where I just did them so often that eventually I figured it out. That was like, I did a few powerlifting things in the past, and got 4 days before the meet, I was just a train wreck already. It was just a freaking disaster. And one of the things that helped me, and I don't remember, was it Lenny Wurzima or who I stole this from, was that just repeating to myself ad nauseum that the work has been done. There really isn't anything else I'm going to do the day before or 2 days before an event that's going to make me substantially better. Like, it's a culmination of all the stuff I've done before. Now my goal is just to display to the best of my abilities of that. However, there's a lot of stupid stuff I could do to really destroy that. And it seems like the longer I work with coaching with athletes, it's like I'm like, the week before any type big event, you're just trying to get them to not do anything stupid. And I get it. Like, you have these weird things, like you want to, I should maybe try 200 milligrams more caffeine. Have you ever done this in training? No, let's not do it. Maybe it's better, but let's not risk it. And then you do competitions, and I found my own brain doing that. Oh, well, maybe I should try this, or maybe I should try that. That's not a good idea.
Routine that works for you. And that's why I said, like your physical training, you have to train your mental side of things, but it has to start in your actual training. So that
Yes.
when it comes to competition time, you don't want to try anything new, because often then what happens is things it might not go according to plan. Or like you were saying now, I've heard my athletes say exactly the same thing. Oh, it's competition day, so I'm just going to take a double scoop pre-workout. I'm like,
yeah.
no. So why do you need to do this on competition day? It's working for you in training. So stick with what's working. And that's also, if you are a competitive athlete, reflecting on what worked leading up to the competition and what didn't work. It's also a good idea, because as soon as you finish your competition, all those thoughts and what you did is still fresh. And yes, it's going to take a little bit of time, and you're going to have to maybe remember to actually do this, or make a note, or make a Google Calendar and say, okay, the night after my competition, I'm just going to sit for 20 minutes and just reflect on how my competition went, what worked, what I would change, what I want to do different for the next time, and then start implementing that into your training sessions. And it might even be the type of music you listen to. Maybe in training, normally you listen to really calm music, and then come competition day, you want to get yourself extra psyched up. So now you're listening to a hardcore music. There's a funny story. My husband did that in one of his weightlifting competitions, and it went really badly.
Oh.
Was overly psyched. He was so burnt out because he was just on all the time, very similar to what we've spoken about. It's, you need to have that time where you use that energy or preserve that energy so that when you walk onto the platform, it's used for good. But again, if he did this in training and he did the same thing, it might have had a better outcome. So if you want to try something new, always try it in training, make sure it works. And if it doesn't work, make adjustments, and then you can always go from there. So that come competition day, you already know what works, what doesn't work. Again, it's in your control. Don't add extra stress to yourself or extra stress to your routine. And that's one thing you'll see with top level athletes is they do have such strong routines that they follow that it doesn't change. And one thing they are good at is if something then does go wrong, they are really good at just making those changes and being like, okay, this thing potentially is not going according to plan. Maybe their competition schedule is starting a bit later. They're not letting it affect them mentally. So you just have to also be prepared for those things. But again, if you have your routine set in stone, and this is what I need to do in order to perform my best, it does help. It does take a lot of stress off you as an athlete.
Yeah, no, I love that. And even with, let's say, general population clients, if they can, I've had them, what are a certain pair of shorts you would wear when you train, or a couple of t-shirts, or you've got your training shoes and like your little training notebooks. I would try to make them, in a perfect world, only use those things for that skill, which again is not always perfect, because I'd be interested in your thoughts. I think it unconsciously helps them with the state change of, okay, I got to the gym and, oh, now I have my training clothes on, or I only have my training shoes on. I'm in the training environment, of trying to get them to drop all the exterior stuff and to try to be more present there. So with some people, I've even recommended that once they're good at doing that, if they're a high level athlete, then paradoxically, I try to screw with them and make sure it doesn't mess them up. It's, oh, you forgot your favorite socks? Oh, too bad. It's nobody here cares about that now. But I think you have to, it's a weird thing where you have to train to get to that level, but then you have to be resilient within that framework. Because there's like, your shoes could not show up, you forget your favorite t-shirt. Athletes tend to get very superstitious about a lot of stuff. So you don't want to get them so far that they're fragile, but you do want to move in that direction too, I think.
Yes, I I actually used to be that superstitious athlete when I was doing karate. And I specifically remember it was one of the really big international competitions that I was competing in. And I had this little bag I had this little toy that I carried with me. I think it was still like a little Garfield, and it had a little band around it. And I had this with me every single competition because the first time I had it with me, I ended up qualifying for the World Championships, took it with me to the World Championships, did really well, won gold. And that was like, okay, these are my good luck charms. This is what I need for every single competition. But then what ended up happening is that little bag got stolen. And immediately I started thinking, am I ever going to win again? I don't have my good luck charms and all these kind of things. And I quickly had to realize that that's not the determining factor if I'm going to win or not win. And you can have these little things, like you said, and have them be, if they help and they make you feel more positive, then that's amazing. But you can't 100% rely on them because anything can happen to it. Like what happened to me, it gets stolen, it gets lost. You might be flying and it's in your big bag and your bag doesn't arrive until after competition day. And you have to be resilient. You have to know that these things happen. Again, what are the things that I can control? I knew I trained my butt off for this competition. My nutrition was on point. I was ready for my competition day. Everything that I could control that on my body was there. And the exteriors or the extras, they are just extras. And you can't let that be like the be all and end all at the end of the day. So I'm also a big fan of just telling my athletes as well, you can have these things, but don't let this be the deciding factor if you are going to do well or not do well.
Oh, I think that's great advice. Second to last question as we wrap up. So something I've always wondered about is, it's a little bit of a woo-woo question, but when someone is getting more psyched up for a big lift in anything, could be general person, could be elite level athlete, any thoughts about the mind space in terms of if it's more negative versus positive? I've heard a couple of stories around this. Like the one I heard recently was, I think it was from Charles Barkley, who was saying like his first part of his career, he said he played with what he said was a lot of hate and very spiteful because of some things that happened. He really wanted to prove everyone wrong. And then I don't remember, it was some event happened to him. And he realized he didn't have to think that way in order to perform. So he went out and played because he loved the game of basketball and loved playing. And in his words, he said he felt like his performance in the latter stages were better because of that. Any thoughts on that in terms of like a negative versus a quote positive headspace related to performance?
I can definitely see how that can potentially be a driver in the beginning if you want to do well in something. But in my opinion, it can also become very toxic.
Sure.
How you are thinking that every time you have to bring back those negative thoughts in order to perform well. And instead of actually using positive emotions and making sure that, you're focusing on the good around you, it's all intrinsic. So you have to be, why am I doing this? Why am I putting my body on the line every single day? I'm not just putting it on the line because I had some traumatic experience. Because if something happens and say, the only driving force is that negative aspect or that negative thing that's happened to you. Say, for example, you get injured as an athlete. What are you now going to be doing about all those negative thoughts? How are you going to get rid of it? In my opinion, again, it's more, you need to find out what is the positive behind why you want to compete. It might be that when you step onto that platform, it's your me time. It's the time where you as an athlete can show all your hard work. You have to think of what makes you whole as an athlete. Yeah, so all in all, I just think those kind of thoughts can just become really toxic, really bad at the end of the day, and you can't just have negativity drive you. Again, it might be something in the beginning that helps an athlete. It might be, because I've seen some athletes as well who come from the streets, for example. They might be homeless and they started training because they don't want to end up like certain family members and they want to change their life, or maybe something happened to a family member and that was the initial driving force. But then you also have to realize that there is positivity to this. There's good about this as well. You found something that you really loved. You found something that you can excel in, and you're doing this because you love the game. And I feel like that to me is going to give you more longevity in the sport, or actually become a better athlete in the long run, instead of just being driven by height.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's always interesting to watch, at least at a high level, different areas of that. So I'm sure you probably watched the documentary. It's a little bit older now, on Michael Jordan. I think it was at The Last Dance. And I just love that. Obviously, I grew up watching Michael Jordan. I'm not a huge basketball fan per se, but the two things that jumped out at me about it were fascinating. Was one, they interviewed him and all of his teammates, and that he had to sign off on all of it in order for it to be broadcast. And they didn't say a lot of super positive things about him all the time either. But it was fascinating to see the lens of which he viewed everything as, not necessarily that he loved playing basketball, which he did, but his goal was just basically to win at any cost. Didn't really care about anything else other than winning. And like some of the other players were joking that like they would try not to piss him off, because when he got pissed off, then he would just do everything possible to win. So just don't make him mad, whatever you do, which is fascinating. So in the back of my brain, I always wonder, man, I bet you that you can probably succeed doing that. And again, it's definitely an outlier, but you just see the cost of everything else that's associated with that, from relationships to business deals to whatever. So I just found that whole document series like super fascinating.
Yeah, I think looking at the bigger picture, like you were mentioning, you can't just be driven by that.
Yeah.
Jordan is like a great example. And I'm sure a lot of people will look at that and think, what is the one big thing that like pees me off? And that's going to be my driving force. And if it gets you through the door at first and you're like, okay, I want to prove some people wrong, fine. But it has to be at the end of the day, what makes you happy. And I just think that's something that even I had to deal with as an athlete, because I grew up in a house where if my dad was very tough on me from the beginning. He would say to me, if you don't win, then he would joke about it, but he would always be like, I don't want to be associated with you. You're not my child, kind of thing. That was hard for me. But then do I need to always win in order to have his approval? And if I didn't win, what then? I do remember competing at one world championships where I ended up getting silver in karate. And I was too scared to phone my parents. I was very young at the time, but I thought I'm not worthy then to be, I'm not worthy for people from the outside to actually see me, because I'm like, there's sponsors on the line. You have all these people supporting you. And if you don't win gold, then who are you? So maybe even with Michael Jordan, for him, it was, if he didn't win at all costs, then people might not view him the same. And you have to change that mindset. And that's something where you have to deal with your demons, and you have to realize, I'm not doing this for anyone else. I'm not doing this because of what happened. I'm doing this because this is the thing that makes me happy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all your time and all your wisdom and everything here. Really appreciate it. Tell us more where people can find out about you. I don't know if you're still doing one-off consults. I know you've got some programs. I know you're busy with some of the training coming up. You're going to be at the Olympic Training Center and doing some work there. So yeah, where can people find from you?
Yeah, I'm co-owner. My husband and I are owners of Live Big Eat Big, which is our online programming app. So we've got the Live Big Eat Big Underground. So if anyone wants to visit that, they can go to livethebigeatbig.com. Then also, if you want to follow me on social media, I share all of my training journeys, what I'm currently doing, and then also a lot of like mindset stuff. And my Instagram handle is Strong by Mona. And I also have Helping Psychology. So that's where I do my sports psychology and working with clients one-on-one, or might it be coaches or groups of athletes. So you can go and visit helpingpsychology.com. Yeah, and if you want to personally get hold of me, you can either send me a direct message or email me at mona@helpingpsychology. Yeah, that's where you can get hold of me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I love all the content and everything both of you guys are putting out there. It's really good stuff. So I would highly encourage people to check it out. And thank you again so much for all your time today. We really appreciate it. Huge thanks to Dr. Mona for coming on the podcast and sharing all of her amazing knowledge and experience as a high-level athlete with us. I would highly encourage you check out all of her great stuff there. And if you want more information about how to recover faster, be more anti-fragile, and just generally a lot harder to kill, check out the Physiologic Flexibility Certification. It opens again September 18th, 2023 for only 1 week. Go to physiologicflexibility.com. We'll have links down below. You can get on to the wonderful daily newsletter. We'll have all the information there, and then you'll have exclusive access to some cool bonus items that we'll have for you there. As always, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to Dr. Mona for being on the podcast today. Stay tuned. Coming up, we've got tons of great people that will be on the podcast here in the near future, so you don't want to miss out on that. We've got everyone from Dr. Hunter Waldman talking about ketones and metabolic flexibility, Dr. Karen Heck talking about astaxanthin, continuous glucose monitors, neuroprotection, fasting, some fitness and business development, autophagy, and even the science of happiness. So all of that coming up this fall here on the podcast. Thanks again for listening. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this podcast, please send it over to someone you think may also enjoy it. Share it on the old social media. And anything else I can do to help you out, please let me know. Any feedback is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll see you all next week.
You know something? That was a sweet number.
It sure was.
You know something else?
What?
I hate sweet numbers.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. The podcast is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should not use the information on the podcast for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease or prescribing any medication or other treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider before taking any medication or nutritional supplement, and with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this or any other podcast. Reliance on the podcast is solely at your own risk. Information provided on the podcast does not create a doctor-patient relationship between you and any of the health professionals affiliated with our podcast. Information and statements regarding dietary supplements are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to therein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.